I don't know about you, but this weather has put me in a very good mood. It's a wonderful day to come and to talk about a wonderful topic of self-awareness. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Deanna Lightsky. I'm the Chair of Servant Leadership here at MSOE. So on behalf of MSOE, I'd like to thank you all and let you know how happy we are to be able to host this event for you today. If you haven't been to an event like this, a cities tour, I just want to let you know the way that it works is we start with a kind of nuts and bolts about servant leadership, and Dick Pieper and Tom Thibodeau will be presenting the nuts and bolts of servant leadership. During that time, you might see some other people come in. If you want to let them know, they can kind of just find a seat as the meeting progresses. But I'm going to just go ahead and get started. Sound good?
Thank you, Deanna, and thank you for MSOE for hosting this. There's about 4 institutions in town that do this, and we're very grateful. The hospitality is totally MSOE. Tom and I are kind of, we follow each other around in servant leadership. We've developed a brotherhood, quite frankly, at the agape level. So we have a lot of rapport. We have no practice whatsoever. We don't even talk about this before we start. But here are 3 elements of servant leadership. Tom, what do you think of that first one?
It really sounds altruistic, doesn't it? But one of the things we're finding about altruism is that we're born with it. There's something innate within all of us that we want to serve other people. Psychologists are working with 18-month-old children, and they're taking a clothespin and dropping it and then pretending like they cannot pick it up. And an 18-month-old will walk over, pick it up, and give it to them. There's something within us that responds to the needs of other people. We can watch the news tonight and see somebody that we do not even know in another part of the world who has lost a child or experienced tragedy, and we can feel for that person. And so Greenleaf began to understand this is the innate goodness of human beings to respond to the legitimate needs of other people, to take away their pain, and to help them to develop their gifts and abilities. So it's innate, and therefore it's possible for all of us.
Yeah, I'm reminded the first part of this week, I think it was, I was at a women's college in this area, and senior class, and they wanted to know how did this work. And it really works by just identifying this in each of us. The great majority of the world, any place in the world, has this natural feeling to want to help you. I've had experiences in Yemen. That's a nice raucous place right now. And in Aden. And I'm walking down the street. I have a puzzlement on my face. I'm trying, this is before the internet really started prospering. And I'm looking for the internet place because I want to contact my office and my wife. And a lady across the street and a man walking together, they look at me and they kind of gesture, do you know? Somehow, we didn't know the language, but we figured out they knew that I was looking. I told them internet, and they said this way, that way, up the stairs and down. And by golly, it worked out. That is the world we live in. The leadership is the opportunity. Conscious choice. Those Muslim ladies across the street and her husband in Yemen chose to help me. They were across the street. I'm this white dude looking guy, and they chose to gesture across the street, pull me into their world, and help me. They had no inclination or expectation that they were going to get anything in return. That's an important element. Tom, what do you think of conscious choice?
Well, to lead and to serve is to be intentional and deliberate about what we're doing. So what we chose is the word conversation for our meetings. Not gathering, not conference, not committee. It's a conversation. It comes from 2 Latin words. Conversatio means to turn with each other, to turn towards each other. Many of you have a conversation piece in your homes, and people would sit down, you're focused together. The opposite is aversion, to turn away from each other. What servant leaders do is consciously bring people together for a greater good. What is the vision? What are we focused on? Don Frick writes this: servant leadership, however, isn't a shallow feel-good philosophy. It calls for radical personal and organizational accountability. deep inner work, and effort to develop capacities like systems thinking, persuasion, intuition, foresight, and listening with presence. This does not happen by accident. Leadership needs to be studied, practiced, and researched. Studied, practiced, and researched. We can give people titles, we can give people positions of authority. You can't make them leaders. People choose their leaders, and they choose those people who deliberately and intentionally are convinced that they have a responsibility to elevate the lives and the capacities of other human beings. This has not been taught. Talking to farmers down in Madison, the professional dairy producers, and asking people what do they expect from the presentation. They have three guys sitting right up in front. I want to just tell you this: farmers don't have to be taught to come up and sit in front. They all come and sit in front. They don't get off the farm that often, so when in February when they're off, they come and they sit right in the front. And these three guys are sitting like this, and they all have their shirts rolled up to their elbows. I said, "How can I serve you?" And one guy says, "Teach me to be gentler and kinder." The second guy says, "I'll second that." Third guy says, "I'll third that." I said, "Old school." "Yeah." "My way or the highway." "Yeah." "If I want your opinion, I'll give it to you." "Yeah." "Command and control." "Yeah." I said, "How's that working for you?" "Well, not very good." And what's happened, there's a shift that's taking place. People in the workplace are asking for more autonomy. People want to be treated like adults. People want to develop their gifts and their abilities so they can serve a greater good. They do not want to be micromanaged. They do not want to live under mandates or fear. You have to have a conscious choice that we're going to build relationships and we're going to make this better together. Greenleaf saw this back in 1970 at AT&T Corporation.
Tom, why don't you go to the best test? That's the tough one.
Greenleaf then writes this. Understand that at this point he's Vice President for Human Relations and Development at AT&T Corporation, the largest corporation in the world. And he's paying attention to those leaders in the organization who were effective. And he was studying this, and he asked IBM, by the way, to buy the second large frame computer produced in order so he could track how the training was going, what kind of effects, what were their metrics. But then he comes up with this. How do you know if you're a servant leader? Do people become wiser, freer, more autonomous, healthier, more likely themselves to become servants and leaders? And then this is the kicker. You will not find this in any other definition of leadership. And what is the effect on the least in our society? The least of our brothers and sisters who are not able to speak for themselves, who are not able to advocate for their own needs. That leadership is not to promote only the needs of the people on the top. Leadership is to serve those who are in most need. So all of a sudden you begin to ask yourself this question at the end of each day. What is it that I did today that people are more autonomous? How are people freer? How are people healthier because they were in my presence, my classroom, my organization, my company? How is it that our community was made to be a better place because of the work that we did here today? And all of a sudden you begin to recognize that leadership does have moral authority to create the organizations and institutions that create the cities and nation that we live in. This is what Greenleaf was concerned about. And I'll show you a ton of books where this has been reiterated in every book today. Because we recognize that something's missing, and what's missing is the focus on character, wisdom, courage, patience, justice, respect. And Greenleaf wanted these to be core to every leadership workshop that he would develop.
I think we're going to go to the next slide. This is the seminal statement of Greenleaf. And the focus of the session that we're going to have once we close this out is, and this one is self-awareness. You could say that this statement really doesn't come alive, does not come alive unless you yourself can look in the mirror and figure out who you are, what's your base, when it's all done, what's going to be the notable things people say about you. Nobody gets it right. Everybody has an evolving situation. I've been doing it I'm a man of faith, so I prayed every day. You sure you want me to be here? And I never get a bolt of lightning. I'm on this journey. But that is one way of being self-aware. But without self-awareness, you'll never get to humility. And without humility, you cannot get to the other stuff that are the basics of servant leadership. Here are the principles. Run them all out. We say that listening is the most important thing, not we, the movement. And there's about 3 people who have done a lot of studying, a lot of writing. They are all very similar. They organize this in a simpler way. But you can't listen unless you're aware of yourself. You can't listen to other people unless you're interested in what they're saying, as opposed to listening so that you can tell them what you think. Big difference. And when you look at people and you're receiving the listening, what they're saying, and you're concentrating on them, they know it. When you're not, they also know it. You're being courteous so that you can tell them. That's a big one. It begins there in your marriage, with your children, community members, those you're responsible in your jobs. It begins with listening. At the end of this session, we will ask you, what do you think? We do that every session. They're all posted on our website. And with that, we decide what we're going to do the next time. We just keep listening, listening, listening. If you've got a reasonably run company, they listen to their customers. They listen to their employees. Now, to what degree, what action do they take? That's a different story.
Raise the hands here. How many people here are a good listener?
I would hesitate to rate myself.
Listen has the same letters as the word silent. Listen has the same letters as the word silent. Silence is a profound experience of intimacy. Is it not true? The people that you're most comfortable with, you can keep silence. And isn't it interesting? The person that you love, you're sitting next to them, and you enter into a period of silence, and then about half hour later, one person will say something, another person, I was thinking the same thing. Isn't it amazing the level of communication that takes place at the level of silence? And yet, we live in a culture of perpetual noise, perpetual motion. Elie Wiesel, the great Nobel Peace Prize laureate, said, "This is the noisiest generation ever, but does anyone have anything to say?" Do you know what's going to be the most difficult thing this morning here? Is to listen. The greatest temptation of everyone in leadership today is distraction. So to be able to give another human being 100% of your attention is an extraordinary gift today. I've been working with leaders, and we do meditation. And I can't tell you how many people will not close their eyes because they're afraid of the encounter of silence and the encounter with themselves. What am I really thinking? What am I really feeling? What is it that I really understand about myself and others? Those of you who raised your hand in terms of being good listeners, thank you. Research will show us that we complete each other's sentences 85% of the time. Just test that out today. How many times are you able to get a complete thought out before somebody interrupts you or turns away? These things are easy to say, very difficult to do, And that's why it has to become a discipline, it has to become a practice, it has to be reinforced by people we work with. One last statement. Dave Scogan, chairman of Festival Foods in La Crosse, they have 27 different festivals across the state now, was evaluated in terms of his ability, and he had to go before a panel which included his son, who's now the president, and his administrative assistant and other managers, and they had to rate him based on certain criteria, and one of them was listening. And Dave, on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, rated himself a 4. Everybody else rated him a 1. He went home and he told his wife, he said, they all rated me a 1, that I'm a very poor listener. She said, I could have told you that. So what he recognized is that he needed to change that. So on all of his work shirts, he had embroidered on his cuff, listen first. And he wore those work shirts for the next 3 years. And every day, a number of times, would look at that. How was he going to change? He said, I'm still not a very good listener, but I'm a lot better than what I was. So when we talk about these things, we have to ask ourselves, how am I willing to measure my progress and my own change of behavior?
Here are some basic, this is a very good thing to print out and have on your desk or remind yourself. The first column is traditional boss, subordinate. The next one is servant leader. So take number 1. Uses personal power and intimidation to leverage what he, she wants. Uses personal trust and respect to bridge and do what's best for the whole. That's a simple transition. Now there's a list of 12 of these. Uses intimidation, humor to control others. Uses humor to lift up others and make it a safe to learn from mistakes. Huge difference. Now what organization is going to do better and in the long term? On the downside, everything, economy is very good. It's been good. It looks like it's going to continue for 12 or 18 months. But there will be a downside, and that's when we get to define ourselves. When the bank is at your door, I've had such situations, the bonding company says, well, I'll see you, do the best you can. When a key employee says, I'm out of here, and you thought he was going to be standing next to you when the company was a pile of ashes, and he said, I'm quitting, I don't like these decisions. And we've made a decision to stay on the high ground, and somebody else says, I put your money in the freezer, you do what I say. Actual case. That's when you get tested. That's when you're tested. Where do you go? And you've all been there, each in your own unique way. Tom, your comments.
I'll just speak. I know, and I think you would agree, that none of us can do this alone. So this is a marvelous list, and how do I move from one side of the spectrum to the other and stay there? I need other people who are committed to my growth and my development. So a question all of us has to ask ourselves is this: who tells us the truth about ourselves? We can surround ourselves with people, acquaintances if you will, who will tell us what we want to hear. But once you have a position of authority, once you have a high level of responsibility, who comes into your room and tells you the truth about yourself? Who asks you to become more responsible, more empathetic, more compassionate? Who continues to challenge you to become a more full and caring human being? We cannot do that by ourselves. And so much of our education is on, this is what I've achieved. The focus on the individual. Right now we are so obsessed with I. iPhone, iPad, everything is I. And so this is a countercultural way. It's we. How is it that we are going to serve each other? I'm working with one company right now that's got rid of all their titles. All their titles are gone. And what they have is a leadership council of about 100 people in the company. And expecting everybody on that council to be servants of the leaders in their organization they're a $1 billion company. And when they want leadership training, you want to make, they tell us, don't focus on titles, don't focus on getting ahead. Our culture is that we have to build each other up. Extraordinary. And finally, newest book that I have on leadership, written by a doctor in La Crosse, Dr. Jeff Thompson, CEO of Gunderson Medical Center in La Crosse, just writes this. Although I'm quite proud of the work we have done, you will also get to see examples from members of our community. These individuals have had the chance to touch the lives of others who in turn touch the lives of others, and a continual ripple of positive change. As a leader, young or old, experienced or just starting out, your role is not so much about accomplishing tasks as it is about improving the lives of the people who are around you. My life has been blessed by the presence and friendship of Dick Pieper, who has helped me not to become a better leader, but a better human being. And you too have done the same thing for each other. Good work, hard work, noble work. This is our work.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you. We got about 3 minutes for 3 or 4 questions, and then we're going to have a 1-minute break and then go into our regular session. Questions?
So how does it work when you have to go to discipline or just letting someone go? How do you have to do that?
Well, I can give you my own case. My experience has been that if you have somebody, you've told them what needs to be corrected, you've brought resources to their aid, and repeatedly they're not able to correct it. The kindest thing you can do is take some action. The worst thing you can do is put it off. They're waiting for you to do something. They know it's not right. They're not too sure what to do. And you take the action, and all the times that I've been involved, but you've got to come from the heart. This is not from the head. You got to care. You got to look them in the eye and say, you know, this is what's going on. Yeah, I know. And they're waiting for you to do something. I know. And then you finally do it, and they say, they literally have a physical relief. Because I'm not easy. I have lots of accountability I put in what we're doing, what I've done. First myself, then others. Expectations are excellent. Anything less than excellent is not acceptable. Just no excuses. So when I get to that point, they are relieved. Some of them are angry, but then 2 years, 3 years later, they'll call me up on the phone, left the company, and they'll say, Dick, I want to talk to you. Real case. I want to tell you that working for you was the best thing that ever happened to me. And the attitude I left the company was inappropriate. It just was inappropriate. And I want to tell you that, apologize, and ask you to forgive me. Question?
You took an example where the employee is underperforming, but what if the company is just going through bad times and you are just engineering? Then you have all your team are good ones, you're going to have just 2 people like the one that you...
Normal. There's
it's
cycles.
a different case.
Yep, you're right. That's
Well,
a good question.
I thank you for asking that question, and I'm going to respond in a very personal way. Last night I was told that a job that I had in my church for 35 years, I was terminated. There's not money in the church to afford this part-time position that I've done for 35 years.
How much were you being paid?
$10,000. And I was drawn in, and the pastor sat down, and he told me this. He said, it's not about your work, it's not about your performance. We just don't have the money in the budget. And moving forward, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to eliminate your position. And I thanked him because he was honest. He spoke the truth with love. Not easy. 35 years of my life has been invested. Made all kinds of sacrifices, quite honestly, that my family's had to pay for. but at least he spoke to me. He didn't have the secretary call me up. Know what I see happening too often right now? Because I'm working with a lot of leadership. People are telling the people in HR to make those conversations. Giving it to somebody who's much younger and less experienced. It's your job in HR to tell somebody that their job doesn't exist. Leaders, servant leaders, take full responsibility and speak the truth with love, and it's not always pleasant. That's why it demands courage. Demands courage. And to speak the truth with love is not only about personnel decisions, it's about budget decisions, it's about failures in the organization in which where we have made mistakes. So what you're asking is really at the heart of it. Do I have the courage to become a servant leader? And am I willing to take responsibility for the tough decisions and then communicate them personally to the people who work with us?